Ava walked out in the middle of our dinner again, claiming there was an emergency at the office. I didn't even try to stop her. I just sat there and finished my meal in total silence. Later that evening, I came across a Facebook post from her childhood friend, Ethan Parker. In the photo, Ava had her sleeves rolled up and was setting a dish down on the table. The caption read, "My stomach started hurting out of nowhere. Poor me." Luckily, Ava rushed over to cook for me. Whenever I need you, you are always there, and that is where my security comes from. I didn't call her to demand an explanation this time, and I didn't start a fight. From that point on, I stopped complaining when she ditched me to look after her childhood friend. I simply told her it was fine in a quiet, calm voice. A few days later, Ethan posted another photo of them playing video games together, sharing a single Pocky stick between their lips. I still didn't react. She finally started to panic, her eyes turning red as she asked me, with a mix of urgency and hurt, why I wasn't angry. Ava had only taken 2 bites of her steak when her phone rang. She told me the office needed her to handle something right away. I just nodded and told her to go ahead. I cut a small piece of the steak. It was tender, juicy, and exactly how I liked it. Ava seemed taken aback by how calm I was, her brow furrowing slightly. She promised to bring me a gift when she got back before rushing out the door. I took my time finishing the meal, feeling a faint sense of regret. I never imagined our final anniversary would end like this. When I got home, I saw the new post on Ethan Parker's Facebook page. In the picture, Ava had her sleeves up as she served dinner. The caption read, "My stomach is acting up. Poor me." Ava actually came all the way over just to cook for me. Whenever I need you, you're always there. I turned off my phone and went straight to bed. In the middle of the night, I heard the sound of the keypad as someone entered the house. I woke up briefly, realizing it was Ava, but I fell back into a deep sleep almost immediately. Just as I was drifting off again, I had a strange feeling that someone was standing by the bed, watching me. The next morning, I got up, showered, and made breakfast. When Ava walked into the kitchen and saw the sandwich and orange juice on the table, she hesitated for a moment before speaking. She asked if I hadn't made anything for her. She usually hated this kind of breakfast, but I was usually too lazy to make 2 different meals. In the past, I had always gone out of my way to prepare 2 identical plates of whatever she preferred. I told her I forgot and suggested she order something or grab a bite on her way out. I finished my meal quickly and got ready for work. When I looked up, I noticed her expression had turned sour. She told me she knew I was upset about her lying, but claimed she only did it because I was usually so difficult about these things. I told her I wasn't angry. She explained that Ethan's stomach issues had flared up again and that she couldn't just leave him alone since he lives by himself. I repeated that I really wasn't angry. She snapped at me to stop being difficult and reminded me that she only sees Ethan as a brother. I simply told her again that I wasn't mad. I finally raised my voice and told her that was enough. Seeing her shocked expression, I softened my tone and told her I understood, but that I had to get to the office. I didn't want to deal with her drama anymore, so I just turned and left for work. When I got to the office in Chicago, my boss, Sarah Miller, called me into her office to discuss the overseas transfer again. She told me it was a rare opportunity with great benefits and safety, urging me to give it some serious thought. Sarah had already gone over the details with me, covering everything from the salary hike to the career trajectory. I had been hesitating because my mind was consumed by my relationship with Ava, but seeing the disappointment on Sarah's face changed something. I looked at her and said I had made up my mind and was ready to go. She looked visibly relieved and gave me a satisfied smile. Knowing I hadn't let her down made me feel like a massive weight had been lifted off my shoulders. I grabbed a quick bite after work and was surprised to find Ava already home when I arrived. That was a rare occurrence. She remarked on how late I was in a calm voice while handing me an elegant-looking box. She told me it was an anniversary gift. I froze for a second before taking it, feeling a bit sheepish as I thanked her and admitted I'd forgotten to get her something. I asked if I could make it up to her later, and I saw her face fall. She told me to listen to her calmly. She explained that she and Ethan grew up together and that it wasn't easy for him to be in the city alone, reminding me that she had promised his parents she would look after him. I could see she was feeling defensive and emotional, though I didn't quite understand why she was making such a big deal out of it. I told her to stay calm and just say what was on her mind. Her temper flared up and her voice rose as she asked me to drop the attitude. She yelled that she had told me 1,000 times that she and Ethan were just like siblings, asking why I refused to believe her. She told me to think about it, arguing that if she wanted to be with him, she wouldn't be with me. I tried to calm her down, repeating that I really wasn't angry. I told her that I truly believe she and Ethan were just like siblings. She stayed silent for a while, her chest heaving with frustration, before finally muttering that she was hungry. I told her I'd already eaten out and suggested she order something or cook for herself since the fridge was full. A second later, I heard the loud bang of the door slamming shut. I was about to go to bed when Ava came back. She walked into the bedroom and stared at me in silence for a long time. She eventually mentioned it was raining outside, so I told her she should dry her hair or take a shower. She was indeed soaking wet from the rain. I honestly couldn't tell what she was trying to get at by making that comment. She stared at me, looking absolutely incredulous. She told me she had been out in the pouring rain for 5 hours without an umbrella and asked if I wasn't worried about her at all. She reminded me that I never used to act this way when we fought in the past. She said I used to call her or even reach out to her friends if I couldn't find her. At the very least, she noted, I would always leave the living room light on until she came home. She pointed out that I hadn't called once while she was wandering around for 5 hours. I calmly explained that I didn't reach out because she was an adult and should know how to take care of herself. I told her I didn't want to embarrass her again by bothering her friends to find out where she was. Ava's face went stiff as she likely recalled the things she had said to me in the past. She had once yelled at me to stop because she was an adult and knew what she was doing. She had asked why I was so controlling and told me how much her friends had mocked her for my constant check-ins. Back then, I had spent hours calling everyone we knew just to make sure she was safe. When I finally found her, I didn't get a thank you. I got a brutal tongue-lashing instead. I didn't feel like digging up the past anymore. Between the upcoming move to Stockholm and my workload, I was already exhausted. To be honest, I was just done with all of it. I told her to just go take a shower so she wouldn't catch a cold. Then I went into the bedroom and lay down, focusing my mind on the work transition I had to handle the next day. It took a while, but I eventually drifted off. In that state between sleeping and waking, I felt a light touch on my cheek. I heard a faint sigh and felt the mattress dip as someone lay down beside me. Over the next few days, Ava was clearly fuming. She started leaving early and coming home late to avoid me, and she didn't send a single text. Honestly, the peace and quiet was a nice change for me. I had no intention of stirring the pot or trying to fix things. But after 5 days of the silent treatment, she surprised me by texting first. She said she was making dinner and wanted me to come home and eat. I was actually pretty shocked to get that message because I was always the one who cooked. I remember complaining to her once about how tiring it was to cook every day and suggesting she help out once in a while. She just hugged me then, laughing as she said her cooking was so bad it would put me in the hospital. She told me she just preferred my cooking over anything else. I was so blinded by her charm back then that I didn't realize how much she was lying. I spent my evenings after work studying recipes just to make sure she had meals she actually enjoyed. I dealt with grease burns and knife cuts on my fingers just to get better at it. It wasn't until Ethan casually mentioned that Ava was actually a great cook that the truth finally hit me. I realized I had been living in a beautiful lie for years. My girlfriend, who sat there every night eating the food I slaved over, wasn't incapable of cooking. She just didn't want to do it for me. We had a massive fight about it, but she just brushed it off with her usual indifference. She argued that Ethan couldn't cook and was a picky eater, so she couldn't just let him live on takeout. She told me I was different because I could eat anything. She claimed she was just looking after her brother and told me I was too old to be expecting other people to cook for me. She told me that if I hated cooking for her so much, I should just stop because she didn't need my food anyway. She gave me some pathetic, half-hearted apology later, and I was actually stupid enough to forgive her. They say the tears you cry in a bad relationship are just the common sense leaking out of your head. Looking back, that feels pretty accurate. But at the time, I just messaged her back with a simple okay. We were already at the breaking point, so I figured a peaceful end was better for both of us. When I got home and opened the door, I could hear Ava working in the kitchen. She told me to wash my hands and wait a few minutes because dinner was almost ready. As I sat down at the table, I felt a strange mix of emotions. I never thought I'd see the day she'd volunteer to cook for me. If this had happened a year ago, I would have been over the moon. She brought out a full spread of 4 dishes and a soup, all relatively healthy. After a few bites, I had to admit she really knew what she was doing in the kitchen. She called my name softly, sounding a bit hurt. She asked why I had been ignoring her for the past few days, pointing out that I was usually the first one to apologize when we had a falling out. She noted that I hadn't replied to a single message in 5 days. I swallowed my food and slowly told her that I just figured she needed some space to cool off. The table went quiet for a moment. After a long pause, she cautiously added that she only went to cook for Ethan because his stomach was bothering him and he had missed dinner. She said she would teach him how to cook so she wouldn't have to go over there all the time. I just gave her a vague nod of agreement to avoid another argument, not wanting her to think I was judging her, and kept eating in silence. She suggested that I join her for this month's get-together. I looked up and saw the hope in her eyes. She had taken me to a few casual hangouts with her friends in the past. We both knew that the gathering she was talking about was their exclusive monthly dinner. It wasn't that they did anything special. It was just that the guest list was strictly limited to their core circle. It was usually just the old gang, no partners or outsiders allowed. I had asked to go with her once, but she had just laughed it off and changed the subject. When I kept pressing the issue, she eventually lost her temper and snapped at me. She asked if I was trying to annoy her and told me to stop being so clingy, claiming I was suffocating her. She had yelled that she'd told me 1,000 times it was just a regular thing with her friends. She asked why I had to butt in and why I couldn't just give her a little bit of privacy. That was the time I finally snapped, slamming my hand on the table and demanding to know why Ethan was allowed to go if I wasn't. Her response was ice cold. She said Ethan had grown up with them and knew everyone in the group. She argued that he wasn't an outsider and that he didn't have any other friends in Chicago, so she was just making sure he wasn't lonely. She told me to stop being so paranoid and acting like a lunatic. I was genuinely surprised she was bringing this up now. However, with the Stockholm move approaching and my desk buried in paperwork, I politely turned her down. Besides, I never really clicked with her friends anyway and always felt like the odd man out. There was no point in forcing myself into an awkward situation when I had so much else going on. I told her I was just too busy with work and would have to pass. Ava slammed her chopsticks down on the table. She looked exhausted, and her voice sounded like she was struggling to contain her frustration. She told me she knew I was still upset about Ethan and said she'd been trying to be patient with me. She said she was tired too and felt like she'd already humored me enough, asking what more I could possibly want. She told me I was 28 years old and needed to stop acting like a child throwing a tantrum. I told her she was mistaken and calmly repeated that I was honestly just swamped with work. She gave me a curt whatever in response. We finished the rest of the meal in total silence and cleaned up without a word. In the end, she went to the party with Ethan anyway. A project at work hit a snag that day, so even though I was about to head out, I got stuck helping to fix it. My co-workers and I were there late, and during a quick break, I checked my phone. A notification from Ethan Parker popped up on my Facebook feed. It was a photo of him and Ava grinning at the camera, both of them biting down on opposite ends of the same Pocky stick. The caption said they were playing games, and everyone was teasing them, adding that he hoped I wouldn't mind. I just looked at it, gave a small smile, and replied that it was fine and I didn't mind at all. I put my phone on silent and got back to work. By the time we finished up, I saw that Ava had called me several times and sent dozens of iMessages. She kept explaining that it was just part of the game and that they hadn't actually touched, claiming they were nowhere near each other. She was begging me to just give her some kind of response. Right then, a coworker asked if I wanted to grab some late-night food at a new place nearby, which we planned to do after we finished. I said I'd be right there and headed toward the exit of the building. I was shocked to see Ava standing right there waiting for me. I wondered how long she'd been out there. When she saw me, her face lit up and she hurried over. I asked her if the party was over already, since they usually stayed out until the early hours of the morning. She told me she had decided to leave early. That was a first for her. My mind immediately went to Ethan, so I asked where he was. She told me she had already dropped him off at home. I started to tell her I was heading to dinner with my coworkers, but I couldn't bring myself to invite her along. She cut me off, telling me it was fine and that she would just wait for me right there. I couldn't just leave her sitting in the car by herself while I went out to eat. I quickly texted my coworkers to tell them I couldn't make it and walked back to the car with her. Under the dim streetlights, she looked at me with slightly bloodshot eyes and asked if I was really not angry. It took me a second to realize she was talking about that Pocky photo Ethan had posted on Facebook. I told her it was just a game and that I wasn't that petty. Ava started to say something. Her eyes filled with a sadness she couldn't hide. In the shadows, I found myself thinking back to a party we went to a long time ago. Her friends had been egging her on to do shots with Ethan that night. They posted the photos on Facebook, and I was just as upset then as she thought I should be now. I must have called her a dozen times. When she finally got home, she didn't apologize. She blocked me instead. Then she tore into me, accusing me of overthinking and making a big deal out of nothing, even telling me I had a dirty mind for seeing something wrong with it. She even suggested I see a therapist. Now, she looked up at me and softly suggested we go get something to eat. Just like that, she swept the whole issue under the rug. I didn't want a formal dinner with her. I told her there was a place nearby with onion burgers I'd been craving, and said I'd just take an Uber home so the smell wouldn't linger in her car. She sounded almost desperate as she told me it was fine and insisted I eat in her car. I was genuinely taken aback by that. I wondered if this was the same Ava who used to be a total clean freak about her car. I didn't feel like arguing, so I just went along with it. A quick bite before heading home sounded good enough. Instead of heading home, she took a turn and pulled over near a strip of restaurants. While I was still trying to figure out what we were doing, she told me to wait in the car for a minute. She stepped out and disappeared into the crowd. Sitting alone in the familiar interior of her car, my mind started to wander. She had never allowed me to eat a single thing in here before. I remember being late for work once and grabbing a quick bite of a muffin in the passenger seat. She had absolutely lost it when a few crumbs fell, pulling the car over and lecturing me for the rest of the drive. I was going to be late anyway, so I just got out and called a cab to the office. That was one of the few times I actually stood my ground. Once she calmed down later, she tried to explain herself. She talked about her obsessive cleanliness and how much the car meant to her. I had already begun to wonder if we were actually right for each other, but I managed to convince myself that it was just a personality quirk. I never ate in her car again after that day. Still, it remained a point of unspoken tension between us, like a ticking time bomb. The final straw was a night she drove us to a party with Ethan in the back seat. He was casually munching on chips and greasy chicken wings, and I felt a cold wave of realization wash over me. Everything from the past came rushing back at once. I looked at her and asked sarcastically if her germophobia was selective, or if it was just me who wasn't allowed to eat in her car. Ethan looked mortified and quickly put his snacks away. Ava just glared at me and asked what was wrong with me before flooring the gas and leaving me standing there on the sidewalk. When we finally got home, she spent hours screaming at me. She argued that Ethan had a medical condition and needed to keep snacks on him, asking why I was acting like a lunatic over something so small and where my manners were. She looked me in the eye and told me that Ethan had every right to eat in her car while I didn't. She called me an outsider and asked if that was clear enough for me. That was probably the closest we ever came to breaking up before now. I don't even remember how we made up. I think I was just too afraid to let go at the time. A few sweet words from her were all it took to win me back. The sharp scent of onions and burgers snapped me back to reality as I saw Ava walking back with a couple of takeout bags. The smell was already filling the car before she even opened the door. She handed me the food and told me to eat while it was hot. She had a tight, forced smile on her face as she suggested we could find something else to eat or she could cook something once we got home. I just shook my head. I told her the burger was plenty and leaned back in my seat, waiting for her to start the car. She gave me a concerned look and asked if I was still hungry. I gave her a small smile and said I was just worried about her driving while I ate. I offered to wait until we got home, but she insisted we just stay parked right there while I finished. She told me it would get cold if I waited, and since I was hungry, I decided to go ahead and eat. When I finished and started looking for a place to toss the trash, she had already started the engine. She told me not to worry about it, and to just leave the trash in the car until we got home. The drive back was incredibly silent. I saw her open her mouth to speak several times, but she always stopped herself. I finally told her to just focus on the road. She nodded and didn't say another word. When we pulled up to our building, I grabbed the bag of trash to throw it away. "James," she said suddenly, reaching over to take the bag from me and giving it a sharp tug. Some grease spilled out of the bag and on her seat, which she usually kept spotless. I stared at the mess, completely baffled, and asked her what she was doing. She looked me straight in the eyes with an intensity that was almost frightening. She told me that from now on, I could eat whatever I wanted in her car, and that she didn't care if things got messy or spilled. She said that I was the only one who would have that privilege from now on, specifically excluding Ethan. I honestly wondered if she had lost her mind. I just stood there completely speechless. After a long silence, I just told her it was late and she should get some sleep. Not long after I lay down, Ava crawled into bed and curled up against me. She whispered that we needed to talk. I was just about to push her away when her phone lit up on the nightstand, clearly showing a call from Ethan Parker. She just stared at the phone, looking conflicted. I couldn't help but let out a small, dry laugh and told her she should probably answer it in case it was an emergency. She sat up and answered the call. She asked Ethan what was wrong and if his stomach was acting up again, suggesting he call 911 because it wasn't a good time for her to come over. There was a pause, and then her tone changed as she promised to be there right away. She hung up and looked at me with an apologetic expression, saying something had come up with Ethan and she had to go. She quickly added that it sounded serious this time and she was genuinely worried, reminding me again that they had grown up together. I just told her I understood. Ava didn't even seem to realize that by saying that, she was basically admitting all of Ethan's previous emergencies had been fake. I was exhausted and couldn't help but yawn as I gave her a tired smile and told her to go ahead. She gave me a long, complicated look and promised to come right back after she dealt with him. I just grunted in response, my eyes too heavy to keep open. I didn't even bother trying to smile anymore. I heard the door click shut behind her and was asleep within seconds. When I woke up the next morning, the house was exactly how it was when she left. Just as I expected, she hadn't come home all night. I wasn't even surprised. I just felt a strange sense of peace. Since I had the day off, I decided to make the most of my last few days in Chicago and went out to do some shopping. While I was out, Ava called me. She started by apologizing for the night before, and I just told her it was fine before asking how Ethan was doing. She hesitated, saying his pain had subsided by the time she got there. I told her I understood and that she shouldn't worry about it, but she insisted on finishing her sentence. Her voice sounded tense as she explained that it had been so late she stayed over just in case he got sick again. She swore she had slept on the sofa and that nothing inappropriate had happened. I told her I believed her. She kept talking, saying she knew I must be disappointed in her and that she had already had a serious talk with Ethan that morning. She promised to keep her distance from him and stop getting involved in every little thing. She sounded frantic, but there was an odd sense of hope in her voice. She said Ethan had agreed to stop calling her first for everything and that he wanted to take me out to lunch to apologize. She claimed he knew he had messed up in the past and was being sincere this time. She begged me to just go to this one final lunch with them as a way to put everything behind us. I knew deep down that we were going to break up either way. I figured it was better to have a clean break in person rather than just vanishing. So I agreed. It turned out the lunch they scheduled was on the same day as my flight to Stockholm. I figured if we kept it quick, I would still have plenty of time to make it to the airport. Before the big move, I went around to say goodbye to my friends and coworkers. They joked about whether Ava was okay with me being gone for 3 years, and I told them I was planning on breaking up with her. They were a bit surprised, but didn't push for details. Ava had been in a great mood lately, probably thinking that once things with Ethan were settled, we'd go right back to how we used to be. On the day of the lunch, she drove me to the restaurant she had picked out. I hadn't even bothered to ask where we were going until we pulled up to a spicy Sichuan place. She used to lecture me about how unhealthy spicy food was and tried to stop me from eating it. It turned out she had known my preferences all along. Ethan was already waiting for us when we walked in. As soon as he saw her, he jumped up and gave her a huge hug. Ava pushed him away almost immediately and shot me a nervous glance. Ethan just laughed it off like it was nothing. He told me we'd seen them like that before, and it was just how they grew up. Ava kept a straight face and told him they were adults now and needed to start acting appropriately. Ethan just shrugged and joked about her taking my side. I just gave a polite smile and said nothing. In the past, seeing them that close would have made my blood boil. Back then, it always ended in a fight. Now, I felt absolutely nothing watching them. Ethan noticed my lack of reaction, and I saw a flicker of coldness in his eyes. He sat down and put on a show of being sincere, apologizing for being inconsiderate of my feelings in the past. He added that he knew I was a bigger person and wouldn't hold it against him. He told me he wanted to make it official and promised to stop reaching out to Ava, saying he was handing her over to me. Ava looked a little pained and let out a soft sigh. She told him he was being dramatic and said he could still reach out if he really needed something, claiming I wasn't that petty. I ignored Ethan's little performance and just grabbed the menu. I ordered the spiciest dishes on the menu before handing it over to them. Ethan looked surprised and asked if I really liked spicy food that much. I just gave him a short nod. He remarked on how sweet Ava was to put up with it, mentioning that she had a sensitive stomach and hated spice just like him. I told him it didn't matter if she liked it or not, because I did. He clearly wasn't expecting me to be so blunt. He went quiet for a moment. I thought to myself that they really were a perfect match with their delicate stomachs and raised an eyebrow. Ava looked embarrassed and quickly insisted her stomach was perfectly fine. She claimed she didn't hate spice. She just didn't eat it often. Ethan told her he was incredibly jealous of me and ordered some bland cabbage and roast duck. He tried to butter her up, saying he was the only one who truly understood her because he thought of her needs first. Then he turned to me with a fake smile and told me not to take it the wrong way. He claimed he was just looking out for her. I took a sip of tea and told him I wasn't overthinking anything. Ava looked annoyed but tried to keep her cool, telling us to just let the waiter bring the food. Ethan asked her if she wanted more since there were only 2 mild dishes on the table. She told him it was enough. He shrugged and started looking through the menu again, saying he wanted to add one more thing. He ended up ordering a side of chicken. Once the food was out, the waiter came over to tell me they were out of the drink I'd ordered. I was just about to pick something else when Ava suddenly stood up. She said she would go to the store nearby and get it for me. She rushed out of the restaurant, leaving her phone on the table. The second she was gone, Ethan gave me a smug, knowing look. He told me there was something he hadn't wanted to say in front of Ava, calling me selfish for not considering her tastes when I was ordering. He argued that relationships were all about mutual care and understanding, claiming that even though he was younger than me, he still knew better. He said he was worried about leaving her in my hands and told me not to blame him for speaking up. I didn't even bother explaining that I was the one who had been doing all the compromising for years. At that moment, Ava came back for her phone and stood right behind him, her face turning pale as she listened. I asked him why he was staring at me like that. Ethan jumped when he realized Ava was there, stood up quickly, and shot me a nasty look over his shoulder. He tried to blame me for something, but Ava cut him off, her voice sounding dangerously cold. She reminded him that he was there to apologize, not to cause more problems for her. He claimed she had misunderstood and that he was just telling me to treat her better. She told him she didn't need his advice on how I should treat her, saying she knew exactly how I felt. I had heard her say those exact words to me so many times over the years. Seeing her turn them on Ethan was a strange experience. He clearly never expected her to talk to him like that. He stood there staring at her for a few seconds before awkwardly muttering that he understood he was a burden and promised not to bother her again. Then he turned and hurried out of the place. I gestured toward the door and asked if she was going after him. She just said there was no point, noting that he was a grown man and nothing was going to happen to him in broad daylight. She sat back down and told me to eat, completely forgetting about the drink she was supposedly going to buy. After a few bites, her phone rang. She glanced at the screen and immediately declined the call. It rang again a few seconds later, and she declined it again. This happened several more times. Whoever was calling clearly wasn't going to give up. People at the nearby tables were starting to stare at us. I suggested she answer it just in case, but she insisted he always acted this way and wouldn't call if it were actually important. I pointed out that the constant ringing was bothering everyone else in the restaurant. She finally gave in and answered the phone with a frustrated sigh. Ethan's voice was so loud I could hear every word. He started by saying he was sorry for bothering her. He claimed he was out of money and his phone plan had run out of data. He said he had no idea how to get home and that no cab driver would take him without seeing the cash up front. He sounded completely sincere. I watched with amusement as the conflict played out across Ava's face. After a moment of internal struggle, she stood up anyway. She promised me this would be the absolute last time she ever helped him. She leaned in to kiss me, probably trying to reassure me, but I turned my head away. I just told her to go before something actually happened to him, ignoring the hurt look on her face. She told me to wait and promised to be back as soon as possible. Before I could say anything, she was already sprinting out of the restaurant. I was left alone with a table full of food. It felt like a waste of good food. I noticed a group of younger kids, maybe college students or recent grads, sitting at the table next to mine. They were whispering and glancing my way, clearly wanting to say something. I caught their eye and gave them a look that told them to just spit it out. Eventually, one of them found the courage to speak up. He told me I really shouldn't be so trusting of a girlfriend who seemed that unreliable. The rest of the group nodded in agreement. I actually laughed and told them I appreciated the advice. I thanked them and told them I knew exactly what I was doing. When the waiter came by with the bill, he asked if I wanted a box. I just told him I had a flight to catch and didn't need it. I went straight back to the house, or rather, Ava's house. My bags were already packed and sitting by the door. To avoid making her suspicious, I told her I was just clearing out some old clothes and getting rid of things I didn't need anymore. She had been so busy with work and Ethan lately that she hadn't even noticed the house getting emptier. She was coming home so late every night that the slow disappearance of my belongings went completely unnoticed. I hadn't lied to her, though. When she finally came home, she was going to realize that every trace of me was gone. I spent a few minutes making sure I hadn't left anything behind that I didn't want. I placed my keys and the anniversary gift she gave me on the coffee table. I'd been curious about what was in the box, but since we were over, there was no point in keeping it. Besides, I've been so busy, I hadn't even gotten her anything in return. I took one last look at the empty living room and whispered a final goodbye to Ava. I pulled the door shut behind me and went downstairs when my Uber was waiting at the curb. I was feeling a million different things at once. I felt a little bad that I never actually said the words, "It's over," to her face. I headed straight for O'Hare. While I was waiting at the gate, I sent Ava a breakup text. Then, I went through my phone and blocked every single way she or Ethan could reach me. When I hit the final block button, a massive wave of relief washed over me. It felt like all the years of biting my tongue and putting up with her were finally over. For the first time in a long time, I was actually excited about the future. About an hour later, they started boarding the flight. I heard someone shout my name and turned to see Ava running toward me through the terminal. She looked a mess, nothing like the composed woman I knew. She was doubled over, gasping for air, and it took her a minute to catch her breath before she reached out and grabbed my arm. Her voice was trembling as she told me she had hurried back to the restaurant only to find I was gone. She said she'd rushed home and realized that all of my stuff was missing. She said she called everyone we knew until she finally found out I was on a flight to Stockholm. She asked why I hadn't told her sooner, but I interrupted to ask what would have happened if I had. I reminded her that I tried to bring it up several times, but she was always too busy with some emergency involving Ethan. She froze, a look of pure panic crossing her face. She started babbling about how she would never speak to Ethan again and promised to block him right then and there. I just held up a hand and told her she couldn't do that. She insisted she could, saying he had family and other friends in the city and didn't need her for everything. I couldn't help but smirk as I pointed out that she'd finally admitted he actually had other people in his life. Ava was speechless for a moment. After a long pause, she whispered that she remembered my birthday was next week and said she had planned on making everything up to me then. She said she hadn't expected me to leave so suddenly. I told her that since we were over, there was no reason to celebrate my birthday together. I added that it wasn't like I'd actually had a real birthday celebration in years anyway. I'd asked her to spend my birthday with me so many times in the past, but there was no point in bringing that up now. I had already decided to throw myself a proper party in Stockholm to make up for all the ones I'd missed. Ava's eyes filled with tears at that. She started promising to do whatever I wanted and said she would be the one to do all the cooking from now on. She was becoming incoherent, telling me she would wait for me forever if she had to. She begged me for another chance, asking me not to just give up on her like this. She kept pleading with me for what felt like forever. Finally, the final boarding call came over the intercom. I let out a sigh and said fine. Her eyes lit up with hope for a split second. Then I told her she had to answer one question first. She told me to ask. I looked at her, feeling a brief flash of pity, and asked her to name a single holiday or anniversary we had actually spent together since Ethan moved to Chicago. I told her that if she could name just one, I wouldn't break up with her. The light in her eyes died instantly, replaced by a look of total devastation. Her grip on my arm slowly loosened, and her voice started to shake. She asked if I was ever going to forgive her. I just told her that we should both move on. She was shaking all over as she reached in her bag and pulled out the small box. It was the anniversary gift I'd left on the table. She begged me to at least take the gift. I gently pushed her hand away and told her to stop clinging to the past. I told her to look forward and hoped that she wouldn't make the same mistakes with the next person she met. She just shook her head and whispered that there would never be anyone else. The boarding announcements were getting more urgent. I just gave her a small nod and said goodbye. I turned and walked through the gate. I could hear Ava sobbing behind me, but I didn't look back. From that moment on, I knew I was finally starting over. When being the easygoing boyfriend did not make Ava Miller value me anymore, walking out of that apartment in Chicago was the only way I, James, could keep my dignity. I realized I should not have to diminish my own worth by waiting in line for a girl who treats me like a backup plan while she still obsesses over her first love on iMessage. A parachute might save your life during a fall, but only genuine self-love can save your heart from being crushed by someone else. I hope that from this day forward, I am never again just a convenience to Ava, but instead become the only person who truly matters in someone else's world.